Admin Tech Crash Course. My name is Julie Perrine. I'm the founder and CEO of All Things Admin, and we are very pleased to have all of you joining us for today's webinar. The Admin Tech Crash Course is a technology-focused training program for busy professionals, and our goal with each session is to create a crash course on the relevant technology topics that you need to stay current on technology and the individual software tools that you use each day so you can be more productive and proficient in everything you do. And our crash course topic for today is improving team collaboration using Microsoft's Word track changes. It's being presented by one of our favorite award-winning certified technology instructors, Donna Gilliland, the president of mosttraining.com. And if you haven't met Donna yet, you're in for a delightful treat today. Donna's career in technology began back when DOS was the king of computer operating systems for the personal computer. Floppies were actually still floppy, and the internet had just begun to explode. At that time in her career, there were no training companies. You either learned it on your own or you went back to school to learn all about these new technologies yourself, and Donna did both. Donna's career in the corporate world started as an executive assistant. She worked in a programming department, excuse me, supporting a staff of programmers and the VP of IT. But that was just the beginning. Over time, she realized she had an aptitude for learning software technologies and the ability to communicate to others in terms that everyone could understand. And her love of helping people, business, and technology made a great fit for her future career in training. So please join me in a warm virtual welcome for Donna Gilliland. Welcome, Donna.
Thank you. I'm excited for everybody who's going to learn about track changes. Okay, show my screen. And so now everybody should be able to see my document, 5 Hot Ways Google Plus Can Benefit Your Business. Can you see that, Julie?
I can.
Okay, good. So let's get started. Now, I'm going to start from the beginning with track changes, not knowing where everyone in the audience, where your knowledge base is. So we're going to start from the beginning. Beginning's good from many levels, one of which, if you had any confusion about track changes, maybe that would be eliminated for you by starting from the beginning. So the first thing, of course, is to open the document that you are going to work with for tracking changes. And we're going to learn how to work with multiple authors, how to work online with documents of several different things. So before you can begin tracking the changes so that Microsoft Word is recording everything that you do on your end, on your version of the document that was sent to you, then let me back up and just say that if you are the creator of this document, as I am of this one, and if Julie and I were planning to collaborate on this document, which we've actually done, then I need to turn on the track changes and begin to put my own changes in, and then I would need to save that document out and send one to each person that's going to be involved, but more about that later. So this all begins by you going to the review ribbon, and from the review ribbon you have a tracking group. So you're going to be covering today the tracking group, the changes group, the comments group, and if time permits, the compare group. So we'll start with the tracking group, and there is an option here for track changes, and when you click the down arrow, you have the choice for track changes, lock tracking. You'll learn more about that later. So right now, I'm just interested in turning on track changes. Now, when you look at the very bottom of my screen or your screen at work in the status bar of Word, so in the status bar of Word, it will say track changes, colon, and then the word on. So you're in track changes mode at this time, so whatever I do now is being recorded with me being the author, documented in the document for change. So I'm going to go ahead and make just a simple change here, and I'm selecting the title First Things First, what is Google Plus. I'm just going to make a very slight change, just something that you can see. And now you notice on the left-hand side that now that I've begun this process of making changes, a red line appears on the left, And that red line is indicating that there have been changes made to this particular block. I'm going to come down to business pages, make another change. Now I don't really like the way that looks, but I'm just making a quick change. So now you can see that in the two changes from vertical line to vertical line, you see that these are the blocks or the areas within the document where changes have been made. Now if I come back up and I click the vertical red line, then what will happen is that Word will expand to allow you to see in the right-hand pane what the changes actually were and by whom. Right now there's only one person that's made the changes, and it's most training that we're seeing here on the right. But when I send this to Julie and she puts in her changes, then we would see both authors' names. But right now you're getting this quick run into just getting it turned on and begin to make your edits. So I'm going to go back to the review ribbon, and I won't continue with any more changes at this point. So let's get these basics covered so we can dive a little deeper. So here you know that when you look in the tracking group, what I want you to notice is that at the very top there is an option that says all markup, or that's what's turned on right now. There's a down arrow to the right, and when clicked there's an option for simple markup. And simple markup is just your way to toggle on or off the display of the author changes. Because a moment ago I clicked the red vertical bar and that expanded to let me see the markup of this document. So it's the same thing as clicking the vertical line. I'm going to go back and click the down arrow again because we need to look at the option that says original. So if you choose original, what you're asking Word to do is, hey, let me see how it was before I started marking this document and making these changes. But keep this warning in mind that when you choose original, if your intent was, I really want to go back to the original, I want it to stay the way it is, to be sure to save your document again with the removal of the changes, which you'll learn about shortly, because this isn't really making your document final. You're just asking to see how it was before you began this process. I know I used to be a technical writer many years ago, and we would always have to send our document, which could be 80 pages or more. You had to send it to an editor. And so when you were going back and forth between multiple people, it can get pretty confusing, but you'll learn later how you can minimize that confusion when you're working with multiple authors. So all right, so now you know what original is for. Excuse me. I think I have Julie's problem today on the voice. So I go back to no markup, and you can see where I have made changes, but I'm not seeing the markup in line on the right. So I'm going to go back and look at simple markup. I'm going to click my vertical line so I can see everything on the right. Now other basics is that down below you have a button that says show markup, and there's a down arrow, and you're met first with a prompt that says choose what types of markup that you want to show in your document. So when you click the down arrow, everything is set to be shown. So if you add any comments, if you do any insertions or deletions or formatting, everything is set to be viewed. But if I just wanted to see your comments about what maybe I should be doing to the document, but you haven't actually marked that up in the document, then I might just want to focus on just the comments. And I'll go ahead and insert a comment so you can see what I mean. And the comment box is popping up where I'm active in my document. I was active in the business pages section. And I'm going to write a note. And now if I go back to my option Show Markup, click the down arrow, then I can take off the things that I don't want to see in my Show Markup. Right now, comments are being shown. So see, when I clicked, if you notice here in the right, I've turned off seeing the comments. So that's really all this is a turn on, turn off what you don't want to have to see on the screen, because as it becomes more cluttered, which happens when we have multiple authors, then you may want to focus on just specific things. I may only want to focus on just anything that was inserted or deleted. Now, a moment ago, I didn't insert or delete anything. I simply made a formatting change. So I'm going to come here and make a change of a deletion. I'm going to choose these words and press the delete key. I select that you are about to, and I have selected it and deleted it. And it's showing my changes in line. In a moment, you'll learn how you can look at your changes as balloons, because you may find it confusing looking at all the markup in line. So let's go back to tracking to the Show Markup. And you can see that it's check marked for insertions and deletions. That's all I'm seeing. And I'm going to turn back on my ability to see comments. And now I'm seeing both. Other things as you work through the document is the reviewing pane. The reviewing pane, I'm going to choose to turn my reviewing pane on in a vertical fashion, so that's on the left. The reviewing pane makes it easy for you to go through the document looking at different parts of the document as to what changes you made, who made it. For example, as you look at my reviewing pane on the left, it says revisions. It says there are 2 revisions so far, and that there is a comment and there's been a deletion. And then it shows me the author, which is right now only me, on the left. And if I click one of these changes that are referenced here, or revisions rather, if I click a revision in the list, then that will automatically take you to that part of the document where the revision is. So if you look at my screen closely, I chose in the reviewing pane the option that said most training comment, and then clicking that, if you look now into my document, you can see where my arrow is, and it's gone to that specific area of the document, which is very handy as this builds and builds in revisions, and I've got 50 or 100 in here that I can go through the reviewing pane and just click the block I want to go to rapidly. On the reviewing pane, if you click again, it'll turn it off. If your preference is to see all the reviews in a horizontal pane, then it will appear at the bottom. So I'm going to turn mine off altogether. And so now you've got the basics of which are so far turning on track changes, looking at the review pane so that you can go from block to block of the changes that are in your document. So now let's go over how you can change how the track changes are displayed, because you can show your changes in balloons, you can display or hide markup, and we're going to cover that. So now if we go back to your tracking group and go back to the option Show Markup, which you saw earlier, but now here's the option that says Balloons. When you hover balloons, you have 3 choices, and you will be shown what's active right now. And so what's active right now is to show only comments and formatting in balloons. Then there's an option to show all revisions in line. And then the other one, which is actually my favorite, on Show Markup, is to show my revisions in balloons. So here's the difference. Looking at my screen closely, the original change I made, one of the deletions, was I deleted the verbiage that preceded learn 5 different ways. But earlier, because the changes were in line, I'm seeing that right in with the other text. But if you choose balloons, then you see those changes over to the right-hand side. They're not actually in line in the document. So it's a matter of which one do you find less confusing, seeing it in line with the document or seeing it as a side area on the right known as a balloon. It's a matter of preference. Like I said, my favorite is the balloon, showing in the balloon. Now, there are ways for you to accept and reject the changes. There's the right click. So if I right click this particular change, I have the option to accept the deletion or to reject the deletion. But then other methods are at the top in the changes group. And I'm going to go to the beginning of this document, because if you are working in a document that has multiple authors within the document, the quick way to go from change to change is in the changes group. So in the changes group, you have a button for next, and it'll take you down to the next change that you can accept or reject, and you can choose the accept button or the reject, or if your preference is to right click, as I said before, you can come to that change and right click and choose to reject or accept. I'm going to choose reject deletion, and then my original words come back, which are you are about to. So those are the words I had deleted earlier. All right, so now that you've got the basics of how to navigate, we need to talk about what you're going to do about sharing your document with multiple authors. Two strategies. One is easier than the other. If you can't collaborate online with one central document, then you're going to have to take your document, and you've got your track changes on, you've put in your own changes, and then you're going to have to save it out as a different document file name, send it on to the people involved. Now, if you are on the receiving line of a document that you are supposed to put edits in, then when you get that document in email, open it up and save it out under a different name, maybe the same name but put your initials at the end, and then you're making your changes. So this would be the case if I had two other authors and I send the original document. You want to save it out under a name that works for you or you think that makes sense for all of us that are working on it, and you would make those changes and you would send it back to the organizer of the changes of this document. And then we'll work on how you're going to get those changes in. Right, so here, if I would save this out, of course you know how to save as. So we do save as, and you would save it out under whatever name that you planned to send it under. And you need to open it and do the same. All right, so let me get into a document that I've already started on. And one thing before I do that. If you do have the ability to collaborate online, and Julie and I were doing that earlier today, then when you go to your File tab of a document and you choose the option, this is assuming now that your document has officially been saved and your track changes is on, and you can choose to share. When you choose to share, you can choose to invite people. You can get a sharing link for that document. And in my case, earlier today, I invited Julie to collaborate with me on a version of this document. So in the invite, you would choose the email addresses and whatever message, and then you would use the option to share. And I had saved mine to OneDrive. Now notice that on the far right-hand side, here's the email address block. There is the option Can Edit. Can Edit is the property that would be applied to the document when you share it with someone else. But you can change that attribute to a can view only. So let me back up and get the one that Julie and I were working with earlier today. So here is the version that Julie and I were working on. So here's, just so that it's not confusing, I'll recap for you. I opened my original today, and I inserted some comments rather than changes, asking Julie to look over different parts of the document. And I have track changes turned on, because actually I did make a few changes of my own. And then I did do a file, and I did do a save to a OneDrive folder. And then I went through the process of sharing, which gave me the option to send this to Julie. So when Julie received that in email, she opened it up and began to make changes. And when she saves her document, the information shows up in my document on the right-hand side. So here is the first one that we worked on. And Julie is the first commenter. And then below, I've responded. So here's one here. Notice that there is a small button to the upper right. It's a note button so that you can reply, because it keeps a hierarchical structure or a thread of the conversation. And here is Julie's original. And I'm clicking the note button again so I can add one more note in this thread that we're discussing on this first one. So you have a threaded conversation. And then whenever I save this document, she would see the latest updates. This is the optimal way for you to work, but you may not have that as an option, because if we do it this way, then you have one document only, and we're able to see each other's changes all in one central place, and we are able to have multiple authors working on the same document simultaneously. And then I would still go through that process of accepting and rejecting the changes that I want within the document. But I would go back to the beginning, and I'm going to choose the option for next out of the changes group. And I'm taken to the very first change that's been made. And I choose to accept, and it just keeps moving me down the line. So something else to keep in mind is that when there are multiple authors involved, you'll have multiple colors. And that's automatically assigned by Word as to the color that the author is given. In Julie's, the color for her is purple, and mine is red. So I'm the original author of the document. I started it, and so my comments and my changes are shown in red. If I had a third author, there would be a third color. So this is the best approach, is if we can share online. But if you don't, you're going to have to work with multiple versions of a document. All right, so let me move forward into working with more than one version of a document. Let me get to a different one here. A few little things before I get too deep is that I don't want to assume that you've worked with comments before within a document. So if you haven't, and a moment ago you saw me insert a comment using the new comment button in the comments group, but if you want to remove a comment, because a comment is not the same as a change, it's just information, insight into something someone wants me to do with the document, but there's no actual change there. So if I right-click a comment, then I can choose to delete the comment. The other option, if you don't want to do the right-click, is in the comments group, there is a delete button. and more about the comments, because I use that a lot, is that when you have a multi-page document, it's much easier if within the comments you choose the next button so that you can go systematically from one comment to the next and reading what that comment is, then make any changes accordingly, and when you don't need the comment anymore, then you can choose the delete button or the right-click method. So I'm going to choose to go to the next comment, and I'm going to choose delete. And of course, this is the comment box I'm in so far with the threaded conversation. And I'll choose delete. So now I'm going to go back to my my document here in changes, and you now know that you'll choose next to go systematically from to the next change, and accept accordingly. But when you click the down arrow for accept, there is the option to accept all changes and stop tracking. And that option, you'd have to be very certain that everything there is what you want to accept. But when you go through that process of accepting your changes and you are at that state where you want to become final, you do want to stop the tracking. And so if I choose accept all changes and stop tracking, that's exactly what's going to happen. Everything's going to be changed for me. And I'm going to do that in just a moment, because I want to go back to the show markup. And I'm in the tracking group. In the show markup, you have an option for specific people. And if I have 3 and 4 and 5 authors working on a document, I may want to focus on just a specific one rather than all the reviewers. So in the show markup we ran earlier, there's the option for specific people. And initially, all reviewers are turned on. So if I choose to take most training out of the equation, then within my document, I'm only going to see that one author's suggested changes and or comments within my document. And that's the show markup, specific people, and I'm going to go back to all reviewers. Okay. And now I'm going to go back to, there's one other feature I wanted to show you. In your tracking group, you have a small arrow in the lower right corner, and it's so that you can change your tracking options. There are a few things that you might want to change. So if I choose change tracking options, a dialog box appears, and in the tracking options, there is an advanced options. The advanced options is so that you can change the colors that are used that are, the default colors. For example, it's saying here that in markup for insertions, if I inserted some text, inserted text would show as an underline, but you may prefer that it be something else. And when you click the down arrow, you can choose. There's an option for color by author, and you can change the color. Then there's a deletions option. Deletions by default are shown as strike through. So the entire point to us coming to the advanced track options is for you just to be aware of the fact that you can change the defaults for how the markup is displayed. There's one for moves. For example, if I moved a paragraph from one place to the other, the default is to show a move to track it as a double strike through. And I won't go over all these options, just want you to be aware of what it's for and where you would get to it. And so again, that was the dialog box launcher as it's called in tracking, and I went to advanced options. All right, so I'll leave that. So now let's go into how you're going to look at your original document and documents from other authors. This is assuming that your authors, your editors, your collaborators have sent back their file with their changes, which would be sent in email. So when you get those in email, you need to save each one of those documents from each collaborator to a folder. Then once those are saved, then we can go about the procedure of comparing the changes among the authors. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to get into a new document for this. I do want you, I want you to be aware that you don't have to be in a new document to launch this process of compare. But I'm going to go to a new document just so that you don't have the clutter of the document I'm working on in your sightline. So from the review ribbon, in the compare group, when you choose compare, you have an option to compare two versions of a document so that you can see the changes, or you can choose the option to combine revisions from multiple authors into a single document. But if you want to start by just comparing the changes, then we would start with compare, and you'll receive a dialog box. Now this is why it's important that you've saved those documents that each author has sent to you. When you get your compare documents dialog box in front of you, the left-hand side where it says in original document, you want to choose the document that is your original. So I'm going to choose mine, the one I started with. Also, this list that I'm scrolling through, these are documents I've worked with prior. So when you click the down arrow, you may have nothing in the list, which is why you would need the folder to the right, which is your browse button that would allow you to open up and specify what folder has your original in it. I'm going to choose this file. Then to the right-hand side, you have a revised document list. When you choose the down arrow, if you've worked with the document before, it will be in the list. I'm going to browse for it and choose the one. Now this is the one that Julie was sent earlier today for our session. So she took what I originally sent her, she made her suggested changes, her markups, and then you see that she saved it as Google Plus Tips, and she put her initials at the end. But you'll have to come up with what you think the best naming convention is for each of your collaborators. So I'll choose Open. So now I've got my original on the left, and I've got the revised document on the right. Down below, you have the option to choose what displays. But down at the very bottom where it says Show Changes, on the right, the default is to show these changes into a new document. So that means that all your documents will remain the same, and this would just give you an additional document to look at your changes. Or you could show the changes all in your original document. But I'm going to choose to have an entirely different document created for me so I can look at these together. I'm going with the default and click on OK. And the dialog box or the prompt that I'm getting, so that you'll know why the prompt pops up, it says one or both of the compared documents contain track changes, and that for the purpose of the comparison, Word will consider these changes to have been accepted. Continue with the comparison. Now that might sound confusing, but it all just boils down to the fact that Word recognizes that you are comparing documents that have track changes turned on, and it's going to create a new document for you. And on this same note, I want you to keep in mind that this compare feature that I'm using, it isn't just for you to compare documents that have track changes. I may have a contract that I created last year, the original, and I have another document that's another version of that, and I just want to compare these two documents. I don't have track changes at all. I just want to see the differences from the contract I created last year versus one I'm operating with from this year, and that would have nothing to do with track changes. But it does recognize that these documents have track changes. So I'm going to choose yes, and in a moment we're going to have a much different looking screen. And when you first are met with this, it can be overwhelming. And here's what you have in this big screen where we've chosen to compare. On the left-hand side, it will say, if you look right below my ribbon, see my mouse pointer moving, it says compared document. And so I can see my changes in one spot. And by the way, my clicking an option on the right gives me a reviewing pane at the bottom. It automatically turns the reviewing pane on. I'm going to turn that off for the moment because I want you to focus on why you have 3 blocks. So the first block, the big one on the left, compared document, is that one document that's showing the changes within one location. But the right-hand side of the screen, it has 2 blocks, and one would be the original, the one that I chose on the left-hand side in the compare, and below that would be my other author, which is, this case is Julie. So when I scroll through, when you start scrolling, it scrolls in sync. It scrolls in sync, so I'm able to see the compared version on the left and compare it against each one of these on the right. So I'm scrolling through, and we get down to where there's really a big change. All right, here I am down toward the bottom, and I look over to the left at the larger document, and I'm seeing the changes that have been made. But then when you focus back to the right, remember that this area here at the top is mine. It's my original. And I see that I didn't make any changes to the section called homework, but I look down at the secondary document that I'm comparing, the one from Julie, and I could see her changes. But all that is in this one big compare. So what you're doing with this is you're able to look at all the author documents into panes on the right. Now before I get any deeper into this, this is an important point. When you know, a moment ago when I was in compare, you had the option for the original, and to the right you had the option for the author that you want to bring their document in for. You would have to repeat that process for multiple authors. So if I had 2 more collaborators, then I need to make certain that I have saved my original document, and I'd have to go back through that process again and choose compare and then pick the next author. So it is a repeat process. Right now it's a simple process because I only have 1 collaborator, so you'd have to repeat that process. Now, when you're in compare mode, if you look in, and here I am, I'm still on the review ribbon, and this time I want you to focus again on the compare, and there is a down arrow. And now that I am in compare mode, there's an option beneath that says show source documents. And this can help you when it becomes a little too overwhelming looking at everything at one time. So as you look, the default is to show both the original and the author's document that I have up. But there is an option to hide the source documents. So see, now I'm just looking at the one document in compare mode. And that would help me focus better, at least for me it would, to be able to look at it in this mode. So let me go through. I'm going to start back at the top. And here's one that says deleted, and it's showing a change of, you're about to learn 5, where the word was a number before. It's been changed to the word 5. When you hover over a change, you will receive a box that tells you who made the change and what it was. In this case, it's telling me that this change was made by the author most training, what time it was made, and that it was an insertion. And I can right-click, as stated before, and I can accept that change. So let's go back to the main point right now, which is this option of your Show Source Documents. So I'm going to choose Show Source again. And if I wanted to see the original, then I'm just focusing on the original. And when you look at the screen, if you're overwhelmed, let me help you gain focus. When you choose that option, Show Original, remember we started this off with let's compare the changes. On the left-hand side is always the Compare Document mode, and the right-hand side are your different blocks for your authors. So since I asked to see Original, then I'm just seeing my original in the block on the right. See, as I scroll through and comparing, I'm not comparing against anybody but myself as one of the authors. Now, but again, in this compare on the left, it does show the other authors' marked up changes. At this point, I'm not distracted by the right-hand side having the multiple authors listed. I can just focus on this compared version on the left against my original on the right. So I'll go back to Compare, Show Source Documents, and I can show any revised copy that I've made. And down at the bottom, because the review pane's on, it does tell me in the bottom left how many revisions I have, how many insertions, deletions, any moves, formatting. All this is in the reviewing pane. And again, if I click an option in the reviewing pane, see, I can see that in one of these, the font was changed to a Calibri 26 point. I'm going to turn off that reviewing pane. I'm going to go back to Compare, choose Source Documents again, and I'm going to show both. So now I see mine at the top, and I see my additional author at the bottom. Now I'm going to go back and do a different one. Now remember now, from Compare, when I started, I chose that option just to compare two versions of the document. I didn't combine any revisions from multiple authors into a single document. That wasn't the one that I chose initially. I'm going to go back. I'm going to close this one. I don't want to save anything. Let's start the Compare again. This time, if I choose Combine, and you know, if you look at you probably don't see it really well on my screen, but when you look at these two options and you look at their icons to the left, you can see visually what you're getting, besides the fact that it does describe what you would get. As you can see over Combine, here's the icon, and it shows one document with multiple documents being combined into the one. So I'm going to choose Combine revisions from multiple authors into a single document. And again, you would get the same dialog box, but your end result is different. So I'm going to choose my original and the revised. And at this point, I only have one other collaborator. You're probably seeing by now how much easier it would be if you did collaborate online in one central document. And down at the bottom again, the assumption is that you want what you're doing to result in a new document. But you do have the option to show the changes in the original. So I'm going to go with the new document. And then you'll be prompted because we're doing a merge. And what you're being prompted with is that Word's telling you that you can just store one set of formatting changes in the final, and you've got to choose which formatting change you want to go with. And the assumption is that I want to keep my formatting changes from my document Google Plus Tips original. So I'm going to continue with the merge. And then continue with the merge. Over on the left, see how on the right-hand side I'm seeing Julie and I'm seeing most training, and I still get to see the original and I get to see my other authors on the right. And I'm going to go to compare, and I'm going to choose show source documents and show revised. So I'm able to scroll through and see what those are. But I want to get some of these out of the way, compare. I'm going to choose hide source documents. And now I'm just focusing on this one, and I can start going systematically through. See, now I can see all my authors because I did the combine and merge. And I can go through that process as described before in the changes by going to next and looking at what that next change is. And I see that in this one, Julie made a change. I can right-click and choose to accept her format change or to reject her format change. I'm going to do an accept. And it would just be a systematic process. Let me go ahead and accept all the changes for time's sake, because you've already been taught about the going to next versus previous and making your accept or reject change. I'm going to choose accept all the changes and stop tracking. One more thing though, let me back up for just a moment. I want to make certain this is clear before I do that. In the tracking group, you're going back to your all markup, clicking the down arrow if I choose, once again, original, I'm just looking at it as it was before we began all these changes. And there was a note that I wanted to mention because, I'm in Office 2013. You might not be in 2013. And in lower versions, when you go to this drop-down list, you've probably got an option that says, I believe it says final showing markup. And I want to make sure we cover that point because that's not how it's listed in this new version. This is where people get into trouble. So if you're using a lower version, you come to this drop-down list and you see final showing markup. Well, when you choose that option, you will see your document change with the changes that have been made, but it actually isn't final. It's just letting you see how it would look if you accepted all the proposed changes, deletions, whatever the case may be, how it would look in its final form. So if you have that option and you choose it, just know that it's not final until you have systematically gone through and viewed the change, accepted or rejected. Then once you've officially accepted and or rejected changes, then you want to save your document under whatever name that you need it to be, and then it will become final. So I'm going to go back and look at my simple markup, and that it gives me those vertical lines, and then when I click a red vertical line I can see my markups on the right. So for time's sake I'm going to choose accept all changes and stop tracking. And then my document now has all the changes from all the authors. And at this point, again, I only have one collaborator. Now I'm going to go back to a document. I'm going to leave this one on the screen for the moment. Oh, one more thing. Look at the top of my screen. Don't forget that in this compare and merge that I chose the option to do this in a new document. So there is no official name for the document yet. Up at the top it would just say combine results, and it would be a value, and you would need to save it as whatever you wanted to. I'm going to choose save as. And choose save. So that I now do have an official document with a name at the top. Other things to cover is that when you go to the File tab, you have an option to check your document for any issues. And let's talk about that for a moment. As we work with documents, your documents have specific properties that are stored in that document, like who the author of the document is, when it was last saved, various things about the document. Also, you may think you have finalized your document and haven't. So when you come to the File tab and your own info, to the right there's an option to inspect your document one final time before publishing the file, so that you can see if there's anything in here that you've missed. So if I choose check for issues, there's the option to inspect the document for hidden properties, and that just means, for example, who the author is. For example, Julie may have created a document. She's the original creator of the document. She sends it to me and says, hey, here's a template that I use. You're welcome to have it and use it. And I begin to make my changes to my document, and this, of course, is just outside of track changes. It's going to show that she's the author of the document. But after I make that document my own, I don't want it to have the author as someone else other than myself. So if you choose Inspect Document, then a dialog box appears, and it has checkmarked everything that it's going to check for, so that you don't have any, hopefully, embarrassing moments. The very first option it says is that it's going to check for any comments, revisions, any versions or annotations, and let you know whether those still exist in the document. For example, you may have forgotten to turn off a comment. Maybe you haven't truly finalized the document as you thought you had, and it will check for all of these things. So if I choose Inspect, Inspector will start running, and that'll also look for hidden text. And then when the inspector stops, the inspector will show you everything it's checked and give you any flags. So let's look at our first flag. It's a red exclamation point, and it's telling me that document properties and personal information was found. In other words, the author is mentioned in the document. If I don't want the author in the document, I can choose Remove All. Then the next flag is extensible markup language. I'm not going to cover that today, but I will cover the headers, footers, and watermarks. And what I'm being told is that it says the following items were found, that this document has a header, it has a footer, and you may be wondering, why would I care that it has a header and footer? Because it may be a header and footer that was, say, unique to Julie's document when she sent me that template and said I could use it. And I forgot to get rid of the headers and footers that are unique to her company and not mine. And then I could choose the remove all if that was a problem for me. But in this case, the headers and footers that I have in the document, I want those to remain, and I can choose to reinspect or I can choose to close, and I'm going to close. Now, I know we're nearing the 1 o'clock mark, but there are a couple more things that I want to cover. Let me get to a document for us for this if I have enough time to do that. Just making certain that I haven't missed anything you need to know. Yes, the track changes. When you are in the tracking group, and here I am, I'm back in a document that I haven't finalized. I haven't gone through and officially accepted and rejected and then saved the document. If you choose track changes and you choose the option lock tracking, you're going to lock tracking if you want to make certain that when you send a document to someone at some point in that collaboration process, you don't want them to be able to turn off track changes, and you don't want them to be able to accept or reject any changes in the document. If you choose lock tracking, you'll be prompted with a dialog box to password protect. The password protect is to set it so that when you send your document back in this collaboration process, or maybe even the first time out, if that person attempts to turn off the track changes, then they'll be prompted to key in a password that you've applied. If they attempt to accept or reject any changes in the document, they can't do it unless they have the password. And the reason why you might want to think in terms of doing that is that if you have any collaborators that aren't that familiar with all the inner workings of track changes, you may want to fix it so they can't accidentally turn off the track changes, and then they may have spent 2 hours putting in their changes and it hasn't even been tracked. All right, well, we are at the 1 o'clock mark, so I am ready to take questions and hopefully answer them for you. I hope you don't feel like you are in a state of confusion after this. It's a lot involved.
This was excellent. Thank you, Donna. In fact, within the first 5 minutes, I learned 2 new things about track changes that I didn't know. Clicking on that little line, the vertical line, that it would expand that sidebar that gives you more definition. And I was like, how did I miss that all these years? So that was excellent.
Good.
All right, we have a question from Lori. She says, can you share what the get the link attribute will do for us?
Absolutely. I'll go back to File, and I'll go back to Share. This is, of course, always remember, folks, that you always want to make certain that this document you're about to send out to collaborators, that you've saved it first into your online folder. But going back to the Get Sharing link, if I choose Get Sharing link, you can see the right-hand side of my screen changes, and I have the option that says Get a Sharing link. And what you're being told below is that it can be useful when you don't know the email addresses of everyone that you want to share with. Because, you know, the original approach I took earlier was to invite people, and I can put in the email addresses. But if I don't know those yet, then I can choose the option to create a link. You have these 2 choices. It says View Link. Anyone with a view link can view this document. And then there's a button to the right that says Create Link. But then there is the Edit option. So you're giving more power, more ability for working with the document. There's the Edit link. And that one is for sending a link to someone that they could then edit the document. So I'm going to choose that one, create a link. And then down at the bottom, it says anyone with an edit link can edit. But let's go back to where I chose create link. It now says disable link, but look, here it is. Right below the words edit link is this long URL. So you would copy that URL, and then you could send that link to a person or multiple people, and they would be able to access the document from a link. So again, the get sharing link, like it says, is when you don't know the email addresses of everyone that you want to share with, you can just go ahead and create a link to the document. And while we're here, you can also post your files to social networks, but we won't dive into that. I don't consider that corporate level importance today,
And
unless you just wanted to know.
We do have a OneDrive crash course coming up in a few weeks. So if you are like me and OneDrive is still a little bit new and somewhat archaic to how you maybe are used to using files and sharing things, we will have a crash course coming up to help all of us with that in just a few weeks here. So the next question is, with an older version of Word, you said to finalize that you need to click Final and then Save As, and that will remove all of the changes and make it final. Is that correct?
All right, here's the answer. I'm saying that from this tracking group on the review ribbon, and you click the down arrow for show markup, that in lower versions, you've got an option that says final and show, I can't remember the terminology, but it's I think it's called final show markup. Yeah, that's what it is. It's final show markup, right? So now what you're getting with that option is you're just getting the convenience of seeing what the document would look like if you decided you wanted to accept all the changes. And maybe that is your intent. Maybe you do want to accept all the changes and you're thinking, hey, I'll just choose final show markup and it's done. I'm good to go. I'm going to save the document and send it off to Bob. Well, you are in trouble at that point because Bob and anyone else you send it to can go back in and look at your tracked changes, because tracked changes have not been finalized because you didn't go through the process of the view, the change, accept, or reject. So until you've done accepting and rejecting of changes and then save the document, your tracked changes are viewable by anyone you send that document to.
Okay, excellent. And then with older versions, I know on my computer, I'm looking here real quick to see which version I have, and I think I've got 2007 on one computer and 2010 on the other. So I know with 2010, if I do a file, look here, cancel here, file, and it doesn't give you inspect until I guess you've got it saved. So let me just open a file real quickly. So if I do file and then check for issues and inspect document, if I haven't gone through and done that accept or reject changes throughout the document and turned off track changes so that it's finalized, will it tell me when I use the check for issues feature?
Yes, because yes. And what's going to happen is if you haven't finalized your track changes, that's going to be probably one of your red flags. Like when you saw my document spec, you saw the red exclamation points, you're going to be told that there are track changes in that document.
Okay, yes, and in fact, I just did that on the document I opened, and it says comments, revisions, versions, and annotations. I'm going to click here. It says remove all, and then close, and then I'm going to go back and look at my document. And now if I click on review, I can't see track changes anywhere. So that did get rid of them.
See, and that's important. I'm glad you're bringing that up.
So if I do original show markup, it doesn't show me anything different than my final. So that for 2010, I know that works. I think 2007 doesn't have that inspect feature. Is that correct, Donna? Because I want to say I usually switch back and forth between my computers because I really like that feature now. I use it almost all the time. The other thing with the inspect or check for issues option and inspecting the document, what it also allows me to do is to remove, we don't realize this, but Word also keeps track of how much time we spent editing our documents. And
yes,
sometimes nobody needs to know how many hours or minutes or what I spent on the document, so I usually remove all of that information from my documents before I send them off to other places as well. So it's become part of my last step in finalizing a document and sending it. But that's one thing I realized a few years ago. I'm like, it keeps track of how much time I spent here.
and those are good points that you're bringing up, because I would say that a large percentage of people don't realize how much is actually recorded to your document. Just not just put track changes to the side for a moment. Just common properties that are stored in your document, like who the author is of that document, and like you said, the amount of time that's spent editing that document. And it's, as we were discussing earlier today, it's called metadata. So if you ever hear that term metadata, that is what we're talking about, or these properties that are stored with the document. A lot of legal firms have what they call.
Right.
Go ahead.
Sometimes what I've done in the past, if I'm not sure if I've done it correctly, is I'll finalize the document and email it to myself and open the document as if I'm a new person to see what it looks like and make sure that I can't get to or see some of those things. That was just kind of one of the backup plans I used to use when I was working more in the corporate world. And I will just share this quick PowerPoint tip, because I just learned this. With that inspect document element in PowerPoint, you can remove all of your notes from a PowerPoint presentation using that same inspect feature in PowerPoint, and that can save you a lot of time and hassle if you just want your slides to go somewhere. So that's a little bonus tip for you today.
Yes, and we can use all the bonus tips we can get. And speaking of bonus tips, is that something I didn't cover earlier, because I was making certain that we got the real meat of what you needed, from beginning to end, is that when you are editing a document and it's finished, you can mark the document as final so that other people don't make changes, and the document is read-only. And that can be done by going to the File tab. And when you get to the File tab, you would be looking for the, let's see, it should have an option to protect the document. Let's see here.
It's the very, very first button under Info there, Donna, Protect Document.
Thank you. Could it be big enough, Julie? I mean, big enough. It says Protect Document. So when you choose Protect Document, you have the option to mark it as final. So if you are going through these iterations of documents, and you can see how cumbersome it can become when you have multiple collaborators and you're having to work with multiple files. And once you get everything as it should be, then if you choose the mark as final, then it becomes a read-only document for those that you send it to, and they can't go about making any more changes.
Perfect. I think we have one last question here.
Okay.
With lock tracking, once you've turned that on a document, can someone still add comments? So in my brain, track changes and comments are kind of two separate features, but I know they're still all on the review tab. So if we lock tracking on a document, could I still add comments in the margin to tell somebody, hey, I know that I can't make edits here, but I'd really like us to see a change in this section or the wording here with a comment instead?
Okay, you'll be able to. The only thing that you can't do once you assign that attribute of lock tracking, you're just removing your collaborator's ability to accidentally turn off track changes and to go about the business of accepting or rejecting when you don't want anybody accepting or rejecting anything in the document you sent them. You just want them to put in their changes.
Okay, so they can still make changes to the document. They just can't do anything to the changes that have already been in the document before it arrived at their computer. Okay.
They can't, yeah, that's right.
That helps. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Well, as with any crash course, our goal today was to arm you with the tools and strategies that you need to take back to your computer to implement what you've learned. And I encourage you with this one especially, if you've got some people who really cause trouble for you with using track changes, maybe spend a few minutes at their computer with them and show them a few of the most important tips that you learned today so that they are able to use it more productively as well, because we don't want the knowledge that you're taking away from these sessions to just be for you. We want it to permeate your entire office and share the knowledge and the information with them, because ultimately this makes everybody's collaborative efforts smoother, easier, and more effective, and that's our goal with these sessions. So remember, it doesn't always happen overnight. You make progress each day just by trying one new habit and trying to see what you can do to make a positive impact in your daily work. So we hope today's session has been valuable for you. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to having you join us on a future Admin Tech Crash Course very soon. Have a productive afternoon, everyone.